Salt is the only rock that humans eat. Every grain in your shaker was once part of the sea. You are seasoning your food with dissolved stone. That strange truth sits behind how salt is harvested and refined, and it is one of the most interesting facts on your table. Because some of the salt you eat is far, far older than it looks. Start with why we crave it at all. Your body cannot make salt, yet without it, your heart and nerves would simply stop. Your blood and tears are faintly salty, a quiet echo of the sea carried inside you. Lose too much through sweat, and the body cries out for it. That craving is older than memory itself. So humans have hunted it for all of history. Wars were fought over it, and roads were built to carry it. Our very word salary comes from the Latin for salt. It was once treated like money you could taste. In some lands, blocks of salt were spent like coins. Across the great deserts, traders swapped it for gold, sometimes weight for weight. Whole cities grew rich guarding the salt roads. The simplest way to catch salt is to trap the sea. Seawater is led into wide, shallow ponds along the coast. Then the sun and wind are left to do the work. This is one of our oldest crafts. People have dried the sea this way for thousands of years. And the sea holds a staggering amount. Dry every ocean, the salt left behind could bury the continents many times over. Over weeks and months, the water slowly vanishes into the sky. What stays behind is a growing crust of white. And something eerie happens as the ponds shrink. They turn pink, then blood red. The water becomes too salty for almost all life. Only tiny salt-loving microbes survive, and they blush a deep red. Whole coastlines glow pink from the air. From high above, the ponds become a patchwork quilt. Squares of white, green, and rose stitched along the shore. I find myself wondering where you are watching this from. A coast in Portugal, a desert town in Iran, an island somewhere in the Philippines. Salt is dug and dried in nearly every nation, so I am curious which country you call home. The country, not the city. Now, back to the ponds. As the water shrinks, the sea gives up its minerals in order. Different salts drop out at different moments. Chalky ones settle first, before the true salt we eat appears. Harvesters know exactly when to gather. Wait too long, and bitter salts creep in and spoil the batch. Even that bitter leftover brine finds a use. In some kitchens, it is the very thing that turns soy milk into tofu. They scrape the crust into gleaming heaps, mountains of salt, piled under an open sky. The finest flakes are gathered by hand. Workers skim a fragile crust off the very surface, the prized first bloom. It melts on the tongue like a snowflake. But the sea is only half the story. Much of our salt never touches sunlight. Deep underground lie enormous beds of solid salt. They are mined like coal in tunnels far beneath our feet. So here is your choice. Salt dug from a mine or salt dried from the sea. One word, mine or sea. Write it below. Step into a salt mine, and the scale is staggering. Machines carve out rooms the size of cathedrals, walls glittering white. Trucks rumble through tunnels, deep below towns and lakes. Some mines run hundreds of meters down. Whole underground cities, cut entirely from salt. The air down there is bone dry and barely changes for ages. In one famous mine, workers carved whole chapels from the salt. Statues, stairways, and chandeliers still standing deep in the dark. Stranger still, buried salt refuses to sit still. Over ages it flows, slow as cold honey, squeezed up through solid rock. It rises into giant domes, and those domes often trap oil. When the salt lies too deep to dig, we play a clever trick. We melt it without ever going down. Fresh water is pumped down a well into the salt bed. It dissolves the salt, and the heavy brine is sucked back up. That cloudy brine is liquid treasure, a hidden sea, hauled up through a straw in the ground. In some places, a whole lake has dried to a crust. Vast white flats stretch to the horizon, level as glass. After rain, they mirror the sky so perfectly the ground seems to vanish. Raw salt is rarely clean enough to pour straight into a shaker. So the brine is boiled in giant sealed pans, air drawn out to speed it up. Pure white crystals bloom, small and even. These are dried and sifted into the fine grains you know, clean, bright, and ready for the table. Look at one grain under a lens. It is a tiny, perfect cube, the shape salt always takes. Nature builds it like a tower of blocks. Some salt arrives tinted pink or soft gray. Faint traces of other minerals color it long before it reaches you. And salt does far more than taste salty. A pinch lifts sweetness and hides bitterness, waking up every other flavor on the plate. Then come the invisible helpers. A pinch of anti-caking powder is stirred in. It stops the grains clumping, so your salt still pours on a damp day. And many countries add a tiny trace of iodine. That microscopic dose quietly wiped out a widespread disease. Without it, whole regions once suffered swollen necks and dulled minds. A trace of iodine, and that suffering faded away. A speck of it in your salt protects millions of minds. One of the cheapest health victories ever won. Now think about what salt has always done best. It defeats death itself, in a way. Long before fridges, salt kept food from rotting. Buried in salt, meat and fish could last for years. Salt itself never spoils. A single grain can wait 1,000 years and still be perfect salt. The trick is quiet and ruthless. Salt drinks the water out of any microbe until it shrivels and dies. It is the same reason a salted wound stings so sharply. The salt is yanking water straight out of your living flesh. Empires were built on salted fish and salted meat. Salt let food and armies travel the world. Here is a fact that catches most people off guard. Most salt is never eaten at all. The vast bulk of it melts ice on winter roads. More still is fed into factories to make other chemicals. Scattered on a frozen road, salt drops the point where water freezes. The ice melts, even in bitter cold. Only a small share ever reaches a dinner table. The salt in your food is the rare exception. And now the strangest truth of all. Salt is built from two of the deadliest things on Earth. Split it apart, and you get sodium and chlorine. Sodium is a metal that bursts into flame in water. Chlorine is a choking gas, once used as a weapon of war. One would burn you, the other would poison you. Lock them together, and they become the one thing you cannot live without. Which brings us to the most astonishing part of all. Much of the salt we mine is unthinkably old. It comes from seas that dried up hundreds of millions of years ago. That salt was laid down before the first dinosaur walked, buried, pressed, and preserved in the dark ever since. So the grain melting on your tongue may be a fossil ocean, a sea that vanished long before anything on Earth had eyes. When you salt your food, you taste deep time itself. Look at the whole journey held in a single grain. Boiled out of today's ocean or carved from an ancient one, purified and dosed with a life-saving trace. Also, a piece of the sea can sit quietly in your hand. Salt is not really a seasoning. It is the ocean turned to stone, outliving the very sea that made it. I still cannot get my head around one of these, that two deadly poisons combine into the one rock we must eat to live. Which fact surprised you the most?